from your perspective, the state of public education right now?
Well, I'll speak from my small school district perspective. I think in the midst of everything that's going on, I would say that educators are really doing a wonderful job being soldiers for education and really standing in the gap for kids. It's a lot of mandates being forced on us now, a lot to monitor and pay close attention to, but I think, again, in the midst of everything, I think there's some wonderful teaching and learning practices going on in school districts.
Transfers kind of seem to have the headlines, maybe, and a few other things we're talking about. But we have some good schools. Is that right?
Absolutely. We absolutely do.
We call that a softball.
So I'm supposed to take that one.
In the biz.
We absolutely do, and I think what's necessary to remember about that is that, especially in the schools in which Teach for America serves, and a lot of our educators, the state of education is necessarily urgent, right? So every kid only has 1 year in the 3rd grade, 1 year in the 4th grade, and then when so many of our students are coming in behind, they need those additional supports, and they need that level of urgency from educators of all stripes. And so when we see that excellent teaching and learning happening across the board, I think the real question is, how do we learn from it? How do we share those best practices with one another? Because it's not about who invents it, it's about figuring out what's best for all of our students.
Mike, what's working?
Well, I think what's working in a lot of school districts is a focus on children and their learning needs. Schools are beginning to realize you can't do a one-size-fits-all approach to education. You're going to have to customize the learning environment to the kids that you serve, and that's good. I think the other thing that we're seeing is districts doing a lot better job of planning. You know, if you're going to succeed, you have to have a plan. And that plan in education has to focus on really 2 key components. One is student achievement, with clear measurables that you're going to monitor on a almost daily basis. But also really focus on kids learning to become responsible citizens. Those 2 things go together. And so it's exciting to see the work that's going on in a number of districts of really holding themselves accountable to high learning standards, but also trying to create learning environments that aren't driven completely by standardized testing. When we get to the point where standardized tests drive everything that we do, then we've lost learning as the first and most important focus of a school.
On Twitter, people are asking, you know, we have some success stories, but not everyone has access to those. You know, is that improving at all, do you see?
Success stories.
And in terms of, you know, if you go to one district, your education outcomes are fantastic,
okay,
and you're on a great track. That may not be the case. We know it's not the case for everyone.
I think a key element, a key thing that really drives quality education and for kids is to have a support system in place. I think it starts with the community. I think resources need to be provided to certain communities in order for them to support the school districts. What works for us is we have a very supportive school community and also a very supportive school board. And so administrators in our school district are really able to benefit from that. And in turn, we support our teachers because, of course, they're the hands-on professionals, and our kids benefit from it. But again, it's about support, and you'll hear this 1,000 times and it still holds true. It's all about building positive relationships with community members, particularly kids and parents. You want them to be on board, and you want them to feel comfortable about school is a place where they can come and be accepted and have every opportunity.
I think we have to think really broadly about what that community is, though. So this past summer, Teach for America, we were actually really excited to launch for the first time ever a localized training institute. So traditionally, our teachers would go all over the country to learn how to be teachers and then bring that back to their home state. And what we did was we said, let's actually continue to invest in St. Louis. And we were very thankful to partner with St. Louis Public Schools and UMSL in order to be able to do that. But even more broadly, right, besides that institutional partnership that's incredibly unique, we had people like Boeing and the Crawford Taylor Foundation bringing their resources to bear to invest in students on the north side of the city. And so what we saw actually was that in just 19 days of teaching, we actually had 23 points on average that our students grew, which is just an astronomical amount of growth, especially over the summer when there are lots of distraction for our kids. And so when we think about a traditional college of education, an alternative route to teaching like Teach for America, a traditional public school district, and the business community, parents, and other leaders coming in and rallying around what's possible and really innovating thoughtfully, there's a lot that can happen really well in our schools when that community rallies around our students.
So is it hard to find the balance between this passion that you guys are talking about, the community getting involved in kind of the necessary business of a standardized test, or is it really necessary, these tests that you're saying can be?
Well, it hasn't been difficult for us to find the balance. I mean, I think a lot of the success in Pattonville is built off of this whole concept of having a connected community. Relationships matter. Now, you can, in the course of building strong community relationships, also set the bar high for academic learning. In fact, you must. And we use standardized tests to get a gauge on how our kids are doing, both in terms of their own learning, how we're doing in terms of improvement and making our systems better, and also how our kids are competing against kids in other school districts. But that doesn't mean that you have to set up an environment that is unfriendly to kids, unfriendly to creating great learning structures. Our high school, with in-course exams, has knocked it out of the park in terms of their performance. And yet when you walk into our high school, it's very much about kids engaging in the learning process. It doesn't look like they're preparing for a standardized test. And I would say that's true of all of our schools. We see great teaching and learning going on every day. That's what's really fun.
You talked about urgency, Brittany. Do you see that urgency in the community that you'd like to?
I absolutely believe so. I do not think that at any other time, at least as I've been growing up in St. Louis, education has been on the hearts, minds, and lips of our community as much as it has been over the last year for whatever reason. If it's because of Ferguson, if it's because of school transfers, people have been talking about what's happening for our children, and most importantly, what's happening for our most underserved children. So I certainly feel that sense of urgency, and people are really saying we have to get this right for the future of our region.
Really? You're not? That's not. That sounds great. I love your enthusiasm.
Honestly, so I moved back home a year and a half ago to lead Teach for America after spending 6 years in DC because of that sense of urgency. Because I said this is a place where we can actually get it done. When we think about the size of our school districts, it's totally possible for St. Louis to lead the charge on this.
You see this as well, you think?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we just have to collaborate and join forces with other school districts. I think we have to make ourselves available for those school districts that are having difficulty and are faced with challenges. So I think it's about professional network and again, extending your support to districts that need you. That's absolutely vital right now, that we all partner in this effort together. So.
What would you duplicate if you could as a principal? Maybe brag on yourselves a little bit as a superintendent. What do you do on a daily basis that you think is working, that could be replicated? Personally,
I'd say, you know, you hear a lot about the Common Core standards, Missouri Learning Standards, but there's a lot of attention being paid to teaching 21st century skills and making sure kids understand skills like grit, resilience, perseverance, life skills that they need to be successful later on in life that, again, are not quite the standards, but absolutely essential to a kid's success. So I think you see educators as coaches now. I think we're forced to coach more now than ever. Kids have a lot on their minds, so we have to be able to connect with them to inspire them to want to learn at a higher level.
Mentor is
Absolutely.
what comes to mind.
Yeah, and I share the excitement for collaboration. There's more collaboration going on right now, I feel, in St. Louis than there has been in previous years. And I say that based on 20 years of experience. There is a deep commitment to making sure that every child in our community gets a great education. And there's more work to be done on that in terms of how the best way to do that is to carry it out. But that has changed a lot over the last 20 years in terms of people's commitment to each other and to making schools better.